So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Cassidy Dunaway, and I'm the Outings and Education AmeriCorps member at MountainTrue. And part of my job is to host these MountainTrue University series. If this is your first MountainTrue University, it is a speaker series where various members of our staff and friends of the organization give talks in areas that they have expertise in. If you are interested in finding some of the past recordings of MTU, please check out our website and you can find them there. Today, we welcome organizer and communications manager, Eliza Stokes, to learn more about local advocacy for 100% renewable energy in our region. Eliza will focus on the power of two recent collaborative solar energy purchasing efforts in Buncombe County, one between local governments and public schools, and another among local residents and businesses. And we will explore how similar campaigns could build momentum for renewable energy in other communities in the region. If you're not familiar with MountainTrue, we are an environmental conservation organization that works regionally, mostly in Western North Carolina, to protect our resilient forests, our clean waters, and our healthy communities. Make sure to check out our website to find out more about what we do. Reminder, since this is a webinar, we cannot see or hear you, but you can see and hear us. If you have any questions during the discussion, feel free to type them in the Q&A below and we will get to them as they come through. So I guess that's all of my spiel. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Eliza to get us started.
Thanks so much, Cassidy. Hi, everyone. I feel like Cassidy did a pretty thorough introduction of a lot of things I was going to say. But beyond that, I will just share that in addition to being MountainTrue's organizer and communications manager, I lead our renewable energy program. And that work mainly revolves around adopting renewable energy resolutions for communities in Western North Carolina, and then advocating for not just the adoption of the resolution, but the hard work that goes into making those a reality, which I'm going to talk more about today. So I am going to share my screen here. One second. Okay. All right, so I want to start with this slide because I feel like it can be easy to think about renewable energy just as something that happens in really liberal communities like Asheville. But there are actually 12 communities in Western North Carolina that have adopted renewable energy resolutions. And so that includes places like Asheville and Buncombe County. It also includes a lot of much more rural and conservative parts of our region. And to be clear, a resolution is a formal commitment by a body of government, in our case, a local body of government, to meet a certain goal. So in Asheville and Buncombe County, our resolutions are for 100% renewable energy for all municipal operations by 2030 and community-wide by 2042. So municipal meaning government-owned, facilities like the bus system, government buildings, also places like community centers that are technically owned by local government. And then the renewable energy community-wide is everything that doesn't fall into that category. So everything from personal vehicles to residential and business-related energy. And obviously this is a really big goal, right? So 100% renewable energy is very ambitious. It's also what we know we need to meet the climate crisis at the scale of the problem. So beyond just adopting these resolutions, it's really important that we advocate for them to be implemented. And one of the first steps of doing that in the fall of 2019 was that Buncombe County and City of Asheville governments came together to formally request proposals for solar energy built on public buildings. And we actually did some research. We had a report created that assessed renewable energy needs in Asheville and Buncombe County if we're going to reach these goals. And we found that only 1%, roughly speaking, of emissions in our community are the municipal part of our goal, meaning that 99% of it is actually the community-wide emissions that we need to deal with. So that just means that we need to think bigger than solely county and city buildings when we're talking about reaching our renewable energy goals. So that was really an area where advocates, including MountainTrue, said, let's make this a bigger solar exploration beyond just the public buildings. Let's talk about other parts of our community as well as we're looking into these solar panels. And so that turned into a lot of advocacy, especially by students in Asheville and Buncombe County, to get the school boards to formally sign on to this agreement to explore solar panels on school property. And ultimately that was successful. A lot of students came out and spoke at school board meetings like the one that's listed right here. And ultimately everyone who was part of this process included Buncombe County and Asheville government, city and county schools, as well as AB Tech, which is our local community college. So this was a far bigger process than we were originally expecting, which was really exciting. The RFP size ended up being about 7.9 megawatts. And it was also important, as we talked about this, made decisions about this as advocates, that this would be the first of many of these solar collaborative buying agreements. So we hit a point where we could try to make this one as big as possible, but that would also just be very time intensive. It requires a lot of decision makers to formally enter into that agreement. So instead, we decided to kind of focus on this first one as a pilot project, with the understanding that we were going to advocate for more of these in the coming years. I keep doing that. Sorry, guys. I need to click. All right. So this is just a list of what ended up being in the group of collaborative solar projects. Pretty self-explanatory, but you can see that it's everything from community libraries, parking decks. There's even an animal shelter in here that turned out to be feasible for solar energy. Of course, we have a lot of school buildings, and for the city of Asheville, I would note that their properties include Burton Street Center and Shiloh Center, which are historically Black parts of Asheville, and that it's really important that as we're talking about the renewable energy transition, that we're leading with equity and making sure the benefits of renewable energy are accessible for everyone. This is just a rendering of what solar energy will look like on the Buncombe County Public Health Building, which is one of the buildings that made it into that request for proposals. And so part of this process is that the county government figures out which buildings can feasibly have solar on their roofs. They also looked at other sites where having what's called ground mounted solar was a better fit, whether they're dealing with an older roof or just a building that can't quite handle having solar panels. And this is just one example from that process of how they figure out what solar will look like on different sites. So ultimately, a few different companies bid on the set of 47 projects that I showed you before. And the lowest bidder was actually a local company, which was super exciting. So that company is called MB Haynes. They're also an employee-owned company. So it's just really exciting that not only is this great renewable energy work happening in our community, but that we're creating a lot of local jobs that have high wages for people in our community in the process. And this is actually a slide that just shows how great the utility savings are from installing the solar panels over the next 30 years. This number is not even including the city, the buildings that are going to be built by the city. So it's even higher, but it's pretty staggering when you look at it in this context. And just to be clear, I'll add that this collaborative process also just made it a lot easier for everyone to participate. the county sustainability staff were really leading it. And so they were the ones who took on assessing all of the sites, making sure they were a good fit, working with the solar companies to figure out who would bid. And so it ended up being most of the legwork done by the county, which just made it easier for everyone else on this list to participate. So this is an example of a couple social media posts from MountainTrue as we were working on this campaign. So the first one here is the night that the Buncombe County commissioners voted unanimously to approve all of these solar projects. And that was a big deal for a few different reasons. The first is that we had a pretty evenly split county commission between Democrats and Republicans. So it was a bipartisan vote. We had never had that much Republican support for any solar initiative in our county before. The other historic part is that it's actually the biggest collaborative solar purchasing effort that's ever happened in North Carolina history for public buildings. So that was all very exciting last summer. And this post on the right is referring to actually about a month after the county vote, when the city's school board announced that they were going to back out of their portion of the solar projects, which I believe was, I think, 10 or 11 of the 40 total. So that was really concerning for advocates like MountainTrue. It sounds like most of the concern was just some confusion from the school board about the process. It was also the middle of the pandemic. So I think it mostly felt like another thing for them to figure out and deal with during a crisis. But we were able to get a lot of public support for the school board to hold an emergency meeting and change their mind and come back into the solar buying process. So this was posted right after that meeting. We had an emergency meeting on a Friday, the Friday before the Monday when they had to decide for sure whether or not they were going to be part of this process. And that was done not just by energy advocates, but working with, again, students and teachers from city schools that were really passionate about this issue. All right, so that is the first section of my presentation, which is the bulk purchasing for governments connected to just our community energy goal. Are there any questions at this point? I just want to take a pause to make sure that made sense to everyone. Do we have any questions in the chat, Cassidy?
I do not see any questions currently, but also if things come up after we finish this full presentation, you guys are more than welcome to contact us through email.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great. So the second part of the second major bulk purchasing campaign I've worked on in the past year is called Solarize Asheville Buncombe. And so this is using that same philosophy of collaborative purchasing for solar, except that instead of involving government buildings, this is really just residential and business owners in our community who are opting in. And so just like the county projects, this includes buying in bulk. So, at the grocery store, when you buy in bulk, you end up getting discounts. So that the same philosophy is relevant here. It makes this process more affordable and accessible. If there are homeowners who are intimidated by, maybe they've always wanted to get solar energy, but they're not sure where to start in that process. Working with experts and community knowledge just makes it a lot easier to participate. And so this campaign is moved forward through a combination of a community coalition, which I'm part of, and then an organization called Solar Crowdsource, which helps to bring these campaigns all over the country to implement more solar energy. Another way they work is that we use a limited time frame to help build momentum for solar. So, working with a 6-month window for signups rather than just indefinitely or a couple years helps build more enthusiasm for the campaign as we go. And the more people who sign up, the lower we can bring the cost down for everyone. So just to look at an example of how that works, this is a tiered pricing schedule, actually from a different Solarize campaign, one that happened in Georgia last year. But you can see that the first 50 kilowatts, they're starting at $2.75. And then that goes down by 5 cents for every additional 50 kilowatts that people add by buying into the program. And the pricing is actually very similar for Asheville and Buncombe County to what you see here. So sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it looks like we did have a question in the chat. I didn't know if you wanted to go ahead and answer that or wait until.
Sure. Yeah, we can answer that.
Okay, so the question from Mary says, is the $142,000 for Asheville schools an estimate of savings over 1 year? And what percentage of the Asheville schools power will be generated by solar?
142, I'm trying to remember where that number came from. 142,000, I think is over the course of the first year. I think that was in the county commission slide that talked about all the utility savings. So there's the savings for the first year, and then they get even more remarkable, honestly, over the 30-year lifespan of the solar panels. So we only started with 10, it was either 10 or 11 solar panels on city schools. And part of that was because there was a little bit of hesitance from the school board about being part of the project in the first place, which obviously became clear when they pulled out, and then we convinced them to join again. But we really just wanted to start with a smaller and feasible number of projects to be able to create a track record of success. So now that these solar panels are being built, they're already seeing not just the educational benefits for students of having these panels as resources on site, but also seeing the utility savings. We feel like it'll be a lot easier to convince the school board to take on more of these solar panels. So it's a very small, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a small portion of the current school properties in Asheville right now.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so I think just one other thought here I wanted to share is that we, as Solarize Asheville Buncombe, our current campaign, we're able to get to the 8th tier in just about a month of starting the campaign, which was amazing and just really inspiring. So this is the current pricing for the panels in Asheville and Buncombe County. And we're working with a sign-up period of April 1st through August 31st of this year. A shameless plug is that it's still open, and if you live in Buncombe County, you can still sign up for first your free assessment to see if solar would be a good fit for your property, and then the solar contractor will get in touch with you. And so our original goal for this project was 100 solar installations, and typically for every 5 people who sign up for the free evaluation, 1 person will move forward with the contract. So we also had a goal of 500 signups. But we have actually blown past all of our original goals for this campaign, which is really exciting. So we are up to 562 enrollments. As of yesterday, actually, we have 97 signed contracts for solar energy. If we're looking at the combined utility bill savings, it's over $123,000. If you are like me and a little bit less technical about renewable energy, these are some figures that help make that a little more accessible. So close to 1.3 million pounds of CO2 avoided over 25 years. That's also equal to 637 tons or 255 full-size pickup trucks. And we are on track now for over a megawatt of new solar energy from just this campaign. We're actually talking now about 2 megawatts as of yesterday. But to put that in some perspective, that a megawatt is the equivalent of taking 100 homes off the grid for forever, just for the rest of the lifespan of that home. And this photo on the right here is some members of the Solarize Coalition. So this is everyone from environmental groups like Green Built Alliance, Center for Biological Diversity, as well as folks like Dwayne Barton from Hood Huggers International. This is actually at his house, which has solar panels. And then the city and county are also part of the coalition, offering support for helping us reach our renewable energy goal. So beyond the bulk savings that everyone gets as part of this process, it was important to us as a coalition to go a step further in making solar energy more affordable. We know that there are really great cost savings over time for people on their utility bills, but the initial cost of getting panels is still something that's not feasible for so many people in our community. So we created a program called Neighbor to Neighbor, which through a combination of grant and crowdfunding is helping to provide solar energy to low-income homeowners, either free of charge or at a highly reduced cost. And I'm gonna try to share a video. We actually got some really great news coverage about this program over the weekend. And so Cassidy, let me know if there are issues with this, but I think everyone should be able to hear.
Today's official start of summer brings higher energy demand and a jump in your power bill. In Buncombe County, a new solar program hopes to change that by this time next year by lowering some families' energy burden. News 13's Jennifer Emmert has a look at the program and how it may help families lower a costly expense. Solarize Asheville Buncombe's goal is to use group buying power to make solar energy affordable. The Neighbor to Neighbor program takes it a step further, helping those who qualify with the installation costs.
As you can see, my house is right in the sun.
Making it ideal to power Millicent Johnson's patio lights, but solar power to her house seemed out of reach.
So I've thought about it for a very long time, did my research, but the prices was just out of my price range.
Solarize Asheville Buncombe's Neighbor to Neighbor program looks to change that. Its goal, help pay or defray solar panel installation costs. Johnson took a chance she'd qualify.
I immediately send an email, I think it was Thursday night. Someone called me Friday. I send in all the needed requirements, and Monday afternoon, I was approved.
The program is geared towards those making less than the area median income, ultimately working to lower their power bill.
We are here to help as many people go solar as possible.
Michelle Myers with the Neighbor to Neighbor program says as many as 100 homes are being evaluated.
A solar estimate is free. Someone will let you know if you'll save money every month, if it'll be a little bit more, or if it'll be a little bit less.
Enrollment is through August. Once approved, you'll need a city permit and Duke Power approval. Panels could be installed in October. The savings differs depending on household size, energy efficiency, and usage. Johnson's home is in Weaverville and says her savings could be significant.
It makes more money in my pocket so I can do other things. You know, you can't just skip your utility bill.
Money she can now put towards her growing Jamaican cuisine catering business.
See, now that I'm approved, seeing that I just started my small business, Taste of the Islands, I'll have more money now to put in my business versus utilities.
Making a difference for her family.
Words can't even describe how grateful I am for this program and, you know, being able to utilize it.
To see if your home might qualify, head over to our website at WLOS.com. In Asheville, Jennifer Emmert, News 13.
Right, so hopefully that provides some helpful background about that program. We have been able to award full grants to, I think, about 5 families in Buncombe County, and there are also a number of people that are getting partial grants. And this is just some information if you are curious about creating something similar in your community, or working with MountainTrue to do that potentially. This is some of how we created this program. So these were requirements to make sure it would be a good fit and that these would be good investments. And then just some information about helping people understand if they make less than 100% of area median income, which is what's required to apply. So just some next steps for Solarize. This campaign is still taking off. If you're interested, you can sign up for your free evaluation at solarizeashevillebuncombe.com. Solarizeabc.com will also redirect to that same site. We're also still accepting donations to the Neighbor to Neighbor program, and trying to spread the word about that as much as possible. So we do have grant funding and some funding just from generous donors, but we can make those dollars go a lot further if other people participate. All right, so I just want to share a few takeaways that I think are helpful regardless of where you live in Western North Carolina. The first thing is that you can pass and take charge of renewable energy resolutions. Working together, we can all accelerate each county's very needed transition to renewable energy. So whether you live in a community, one of those 12 communities that already has a resolution, or you're just passionate about this where you are, I think that is a really good tool to move forward with. Another thing that's been very helpful in moving that work forward is having a diverse coalition of people that are supporting renewable energy. So in Buncombe County, that has meant working not just with environmentalists, but alongside organizations that work with people in poverty, transit advocates, people that are passionate about this issue for a number of different reasons. And then understanding the unique dynamics of your community and what matters to your local elected officials. So climate change was a big reason for passing this in Asheville, but that might not resonate where you live. You might live somewhere where people really care a lot more about cost savings, or I think everywhere people are concerned about creating new jobs, especially after the pandemic, having high paying local jobs that can be created by the solar industry. So I think it's okay if everything I'm saying doesn't, you're thinking maybe that doesn't resonate with my community. You know your community best. And I think there are reasons, no matter where you live, that renewable energy would make a lot of sense. Another thing I would emphasize is that bulk purchasing is a really great tool. It creates more solar more quickly. It also helps you build community, connect with other advocates in the process, so you're not just trying to go it alone. And then making solar more affordable helps communities adopt more solar more quickly as well. So I think that's important when we're thinking about these really ambitious goals, that we also need to think about how we make that accessible. So obviously we can't just focus on solar on rich people's homes if we're going to reach a goal of 100% renewable energy. So having a program like Neighbor to Neighbor, where we're spreading out who can apply and get solar on their roofs, I think has been really key. Another thing I would recommend is trying to minimize work for certain decision makers in your community. So in the example of the collaborative purchasing agreement between Buncombe County and schools, the county was most passionate about that project, was really doing the brunt of the work in terms of assessing if solar was a good match at the school sites. They paid for those assessments. They did all of the coordination with solar companies. and really just move that process forward without the school having to do much work. And so I think if you can really come to decision makers who might be really busy, just like don't know a lot about solar energy, coming to them with a proposal means that even if you kind of have a core group of advocates, you can be very effective, get buy-in from a lot of people in your community without needing them to be as passionate as you are about an issue. And then one last thought is considering if local government pays for the utility bills for public schools in your area. So that was also the case with Buncombe County. Buncombe County pays for the utility bills for Asheville and Buncombe schools, I think for the community college as well. And so that's a great tool where not only are we moving toward more renewable energy, but this is saving on utility costs for everyone involved. And it means that the county, since they were the most interested in moving this forward, it's another way that the public schools don't have to do as much work to make this a reality. So that's what I've got. This is my contact information. If you are, we're going to take some questions now, but if you want to talk offline about anything I shared or have questions about how some of this might apply in your community, feel free to reach out. That's my information. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And yeah, I would love to hear if there are any other questions or thoughts.
So we did have a follow-up to the previous question about Asheville schools. And the second question was, what percentage of the Asheville schools' power will be generated by solar?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number. So all of those projects that were listed were just for some part of the school facility, but not for the whole school. So it might mean that they are like, I don't know, powering a science building on campus with solar, but not the rest of the school. So again, I would say that it's a start. We certainly want to see a lot more of these pass in the future. I don't know what the total number of schools in Asheville and Buncombe County is. So I don't have a percentage, but I can look into that for Mary if she's interested.
Awesome. So we did have another question from David. It says, for counties that are not part of these programs, Clay, Cherokee, Graham, how do you recommend building community support to get programs going in our area?
Yeah, hopefully he asked that before my last couple slides. Yeah, so I think starting with communities that, you know, either have a renewable energy resolution that, you know, maybe it's sitting on a shelf somewhere and needs some community support, or getting that adopted in the first place. There are some really conservative communities that have adopted those resolutions. And I guess I would say that if you live somewhere where passing a resolution about climate change isn't going to work, and you know that, then that's something that you know and that you can bring into that decision-making process. So maybe it's a resolution about creating more solar energy jobs in the wake of the pandemic. Or maybe it's about the role that the local government should play in reducing spending so that the community has more money for other things. All of those can be tied to solar energy. But I think that also requires having conversations with the actual local elected officials, if you can, and creating a local coalition can be really helpful in doing that. There's an example in Candler, actually, which is in Buncombe County, but is a more conservative community, where one of MountainTrue's, our faith-based program, the Creation Care Alliance, was going door to door, offering LED light bulbs to people in that community to help reduce energy use as well as the cost of utility bills. And they actually ended up knocking on the door of one of our Republican county commissioners and ended up having this really great conversation with him where it turned out that he was really excited about renewable energy, and he really saw it through a faith lens, and it really lined up with his belief about protecting God's creation. And so he was one of the commissioners who voted yes on the city and county proposal. But I would just share that to say that I think even in areas that are more conservative or rural, or climate change is not the message that resonates, that there are other messages that can resonate, and building relationships with people one-on-one is a great way to move that forward.
Awesome. Well, we have one other question from David that says, do you have sample wording for a community resolution?
I do, actually. I will make a note of that, and I can send that to him. Yeah, I think there are, I have access to a few of the other ones too in like Clyde and some other small towns. So, and you might, David, you might look those up. I feel like they would come up in the notes of whatever local government meeting where that was voted on. But yeah, I would be happy to share an example of what Asheville and Buncombe counties look like.
Awesome. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. So I want to say thank you all for joining us, and don't forget to tune in to our next MountainTrue University on July 14th at 12 p.m. to hear from Chris Joyelle, Director of the Asheville Design Center, and to hear about MountainTrue's Healthy Communities program, and as we explore how climate change will impact our decisions around affordable housing, transportation, and racial equality. Cool. Well, thank you all for coming, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.